building confidence and harmonizing with nature. With over 4 decades of changing lives, your self-discovery archaeologist, get ready to be the best of you with your host, Beverly.
Welcome, everybody, to the show where being you has never gotten better or easier. Today, what we're going to talk about is limiting beliefs concerning confidence and belief and trust in yourself, and how all that works to help you become the best you that you can do. Today, I have a guest. His name is Robert Carlisle. You would like to join us, Robert? We'd love to have you here. And we're going to just kind of have a free for all, shall we say? Hey, Robert, a little conversation on what it means, you know, to overcome and get beyond these limiting beliefs and what they're actually all about. So when we talk about the first thing in confidence, there's so many different levels of confidence and where you can use your confidence. There's a different level of confidence that in business, right? You really want to know your stuff. So if you're doing a presentation, you want to have it precise. You want to make sure that you've got everything in order. Have an outline so that you can follow that outline and stay on target, but have your voice in that presence of, yes, I know what I'm talking about. I'm in detail and I've got this, and this is the way we go, step by step by step by step. That shows that you really do know what you're talking about, and people will be able to hear it in your voice and even in your body language. That's huge. So having confidence in business is one thing. But when you have a confidence in a relationship, it's a whole different thing. You don't want to have that static movement of discipline. It has to be this and this and this and this and this, right? It has to be kind of a softer, okay, especially when you're talking to a child, right? It's like, okay, we need to change some things. We have rules and we have barriers and limitations. So this is the thing we're going to do here. This is the law of the house, right? And as a child grows, those laws expand, get a little tougher maybe in different areas. But then the child needs to understand that why you're saying no or why you're stopping them from doing certain things probably come from, say, protection, or you're afraid they might get in danger, or they're just not quite at that age as a teenager, especially. They want to just go out and sow their oats, and it's like, maybe not quite like that. But you have to explain to them too, so it's open lines of communication. But having the confidence to be able to communicate with your child on those levels of growth so that they can share their feelings with them and their questions without you just saying, because I said so. Oh my gosh. I don't know about you, Robert, but I can remember my parents saying to me, when I say why, because I said so. It's like,
Mhm.
well, what does that got to do with anything, right? Did you ever have that happen to you?
Well, I could never ask why. It was 1, 2, 3, and that's it.
Oh, so you didn't even get a chance to say why not, huh?
Yeah, there's no questioning.
Ah, so how many of our listeners out there have been on both sides, where it was spoken and you just did, and you had 3 seconds or less to do? Or if you said, why, well, why not? And it's because I said so, right? Comment below. Let us know how that worked as you were progressing in your childhood and into your young adult, and then even into your adult life, because, being a parent sometimes just never stops, right? Um, I lost both of my parents, so I don't have them around anymore. And it wasn't until later in my life when I could actually be friends with my dad and friends with my mom and not have that child parent relationship. But I think a lot of that had to do too with how I opened up the lines of communication and started communicating with, especially with my mother, on a whole different level of understanding of where my perceptions come from and where my beliefs have gone different from my background of how I grew up. And my mom at first she just like didn't understand it. But the more we talked and I explained to her, why I had those beliefs and stuff, it was like, oh, well, that makes sense because she could remember things in her childhood that she went back to that she couldn't talk to because there wasn't anybody there to listen or to share. And so you just kind of suppress those things. So she was able to open up to me in avenues of wonderment because I was confident enough to be able to share that with her on a level to create where she could understand where my truth and beliefs went. And we'll talk more about that in the next session of the show. But that confidence, being able to not fear being, saying what you want to say out of maybe they're not going to like it, or they're going to reject you for it, or they're going to tell you you're stupid for believing that way, something like that. But just having the confidence to actually even just say it, especially when it comes to a parent. Have you had any experiences that way? Would you like to share some of your childhood with the confidence level of where you felt as a child and where you can, looking back, see what your parents did at that age?
Yeah, I mean, I just thinking back to when I would be like going out like maybe recreation with my father. um you know I wasn't really the hunter, right? I was
Oh,
more the
okay.
fisherman. So I felt, it's because I wasn't comfortable with, with shooting deer and animals and stuff. uh there was I guess there was a little disconnect there, but where we did connect are the things that I like to do, and I think my father actually saw the things I like to do, and then he would really emphasize that, like fishing. I mean, anytime he said, "Hey, we're going to go fishing," I was all excited.
Right.
Anytime he says, "Hey, I'm going to go deer hunting, we're going to go sit in a stand, sub below zero," I'd be like, not interested. you know.
Right.
But I can relate, to my childhood, being a little, I guess, intimidated on the, side of going hunting with my dad. I wasn't, it wasn't my forte. So,
Right.
you know, I guess that would be one of the, I guess, parts in my life that I felt, you know, intimidated or shy or whatever,
Hmm.
and it did affect, I guess, the relationship a little bit with my dad. But I think he saw other parts. Like I said, like I was interested in fishing, and he knew that when we're going to go fishing, it was going to be a good time.
Right. Right. And that's something that we can learn from, as well, is to watch the child's reaction, So when he said, let's go fishing, whoa, okay, I'm ready. And you go get your fishing pole and you get your hat and you get your bucket and you get, your
Hmm.
tackle box, the whole thing. It's like, I'm ready, Dad. And he goes, whoa, well, we got an hour before we take off. And you're like, an hour? Seems like a lifetime to a child, right?
Yep.
But
Yep.
when he said, well, we're going to go hunting today and whatever, and you're like, oh, seriously? And then you just
Yep.
kind of wander off and try to find something else to stay busy, right?
Yep.
But again, so as a child, you weren't confident to say, "I don't like to do that, Dad. I don't want to go."
Right.
Right?
Because
And
I didn't want to hurt my dad's feelings. So
exactly.
I actually went with him to whatever he wanted to do, but
Right.
it wasn't my forte. And
Right.
I think that was, you could definitely tell, you know that maybe there wasn't a bonding, right
Right.
away. But on the things I like to do, yeah, I mean,
Wow.
I
Then
bonded
you
right
were
away.
all. Yep. Yeah.
Yep.
And that's something we can learn as parents, or even as aunt and uncles, grandparents, is to really pay attention to what that child's response is, so that when you can see their action and give them the option. So if you see that like deer in the headlight look, like, oh, but they don't want to say no, because out of respect, because we're teaching our children respect as well, then give them an option and say, well, if you don't really want to go, if that's not your forte, if you're not excited about it, it's okay. And we can do something. Maybe when I get back, we'll do some fun thing that you like to do. How's that? Right? Now the child's eyes are going to light up, and it's like, oh, I'm off the hook. I don't have to do this, and I'm not disappointing to my parents and stuff like that, right? Rather than forcing the child to do something against their will. And you have to look at it from your standpoint, even as an adult, is to, do you like being forced to do something against your will? Nobody likes that, right? People pleasers like to just, because they don't want that conflict. So they're always going to do, and put the other person first and not communicate that that's really not my choice, but okay, because I want to make you happy. And then, but you're not present. You're not present in that activity. And especially if that activity includes, mental stuff where you've got to be, writing or building or doing whatever, you need to be present in the whole. It's just like going hunting. You need to be present when you've got that gun up there and you're ready to shoot. You better know what you're pointing at, not just shooting randomly, right? So there's a lot of things that go on that confidence level. Know what your passions are and your desires and your likes, and don't be afraid to say that word no, right? Or just, that's not for me. That I am so excited, or whether it's a brother, uncle, doesn't matter, right? I mean, I got nieces and nephews at 10 and 12 years old that are out there, and and they're hunters, and it's like, hey, go for it. Not my cup of tea, but go for it, right? And be able to speak and be able to allow your child to be an expression of that. They're expressing it by their body language. Give them an opportunity then to speak what that body language is saying. Be confident enough to be able to say, "Oh, you're not too happy or thrilled about going hunting today. What's up with that?" Now the child can, and say, "It's okay if you don't want to go." And open up those lines of communication. And the sooner you can open those lines of communication at an early age, the easier it is as you get into those teenage years and then into the adult life, where now you can be not just a parent child, but you can be a friend, right? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things, looking back, I wish I could have done, growing up differently too, but it's it's that learning curve. You don't know what you don't know, right? So that confidence level, being in a relationship, regardless of who that relationship is with, whether it's your life partner, is different. Being in business, whether you're working for someone or in your own business, and you have people that are working for you, it's open those communications. It's not about dictating what to do, because you'll find that when you open the lines of communication and let it be kind of a mastermind group, with the people that you've employed, or even with your boss, um, the confidence to be able to speak it makes for a more happier and more productive outcome in business and in relationships. And then we can look at confidence in health. What do you think that means, Robert? If you were looking at confidence in your health, how would that appear to you?
Confidence in my health.
Hmm.
How that would look to me. Well, one, just knowing that, paying attention to yourself and its needs. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I mean, if you're always like feeling like you're out of shape, I guess, that might be a sign that, hey, whatever you're doing, you might need to change those habits. Like maybe
Right?
walking up the stairs and you're feeling winded. You're like, wow, I just realized, I'm like, I never had that happen before.
Uh-huh.
And that could be a sign of like, hey, you need to start paying attention to your health. Because I mean,
Right.
I always think the best investment is in your health first. Because if you're not healthy, how are you going to go out and handle that job, or
Right. Nothing else
how,
matters, huh?
yeah, how are you going to go out and spend the time,
Hmm.
from all the wealth that you built if you're not healthy? So
Right, right. And then it's, what are you going to do about it? Now that you've recognized that something is running amok in this physical body, what are you going to do to change it, right? And be confident enough to know that the choices that you're making to breathe easier, or to build up their muscles, or it's like, well, I've got a little excess around here, maybe I need to tweak what I'm eating or how I'm eating. It's not about spending 2 hours at the gym. It's about really being in balance with what's going on, and and be confident with the choices that you make and what you want to do. And like you say, pay attention. Pay
Yep.
attention to what's going on with your body. Your body will give you the signs. It'll say, "Hey, hold on here a minute. Something in this thing isn't quite right." Like running up the stairs and you're like, "Oh my God, what the heck?"
Hmm.
And so what's causing that? So you need to respond to that in a manner of, what do I need to do to be able to breathe easier and breathe better? Maybe you put on an extra 10 or 20 pounds, right? And it's got weight on your chest,
Hmm.
because your lungs go, throughout the body, right? They're long, and they get down where that intestinal tract is. If it's full and it's pushing pressure up, this is why women who are pregnant, right? They have different issues going on because of the size that's happening, or the growth in there. It's putting pressure up there on the lungs. It can put pressure on the bladder. And well, we know that one, ladies, don't, don't we? Right? So all these things happen, and then how do we get back into that? So it's recognizing what's causing it, and then fix or shift so that it can come back into balance, and being confident with those choices that you're making. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. Do you have anything else you'd like to add about confidence, Robert? Yeah.
In regards to health,
All of them, either health, relationships, or in business.
well, I think we were talking yesterday about that, and I think confidence comes with your surroundings, and like I was saying, like when I was in the military, the confidence was basically entrenched into my mind. When I had a drill sergeant say, "Hey, you got to do it like this," I mean, I was confident that I just had to do what he told me.
Hmm.
As long as I did what he told me, I had the confidence. And
Right.
then when I shifted from military to the civilian world, I found that my confidence was maybe a little bit overpowering, and that I had to dial back a little bit. I had to adjust to the environment, because now it wasn't me being told what to do and I was doing it. It was me. I had to think what I had to do and articulate you know, um, to a new surrounding. And from that transition, I think people could lose their confidence if they're not used to that environment. So going
Right.
from military barking out orders to now I'm in a sales position where I have to be inventive and think, what is my customer or client looking for? I had to articulate that way, to what their needs were, and if I couldn't figure that out, that would add a stress to the confidence. So I think transitioning from different environments, some people might lose their confidence.
That's a really good point. And and moving from one, say one place of residence to another, especially if you're
Hmm.
going into a different culture, say from
Yep.
one country to another country, even going from East Coast to West Coast,
Yep.
stopping over in the central, or even in the mountain time. Each one of those has their own style.
Yep.
I going to the south, one of the things that just, it took me a long time to get used to, when people would say, "Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am." I'm like,
Hmm.
"Oh, what's this ma'am thing?" It just like really threw me for a loop. But that was just the way the South operated, and it's just, wow. It took me a long time to just get used to that, and not quite sure what that was all about. But it was, yeah. The first time it said to me, I'm like, "Whoa, I'm a ma'am down here."
Yeah, when
Yeah.
I was in Hawaii, that's a different culture out there as
Oh,
well,
sure,
and
sure.
everybody's auntie, uncle, and the ladies kiss you on the side of the cheek, when you meet them,
Hmm.
and then the men basically do the "hey, brah," and they kind of give you a hug and everything. That was a little. It took a little getting used to that.
Right.
And imagine have to be in that environment to sell them things. I'm basically, I'm
Yeah,
coming into their environment, and I'm
exactly.
like total outsider. So
Yeah.
that definitely that definitely shrugged the tree on my confidence.
Yeah, because you're like, whoa, and you don't want to offend them because that's
Yep.
there, and we'll go into that trust and that belief system, when we come back from the break. So we're going to take a little commercial
Okay.
break. So when we come back, we'll discuss, so hold that thought, and we'll discuss a little deeper on what those belief systems are. And we are back. Wow. So, Robert, we talked a little bit about all this confidence thing going on, right?
Hmm.
And so we're going to take a little bit of time here and talk about the belief and where your belief system is in your environment as you're growing up. And then when you adventure out to different avenues and you're in other elements of different belief systems in cultures. So belief system and culture systems kind of clash sometimes. So why don't you share a little bit about how you felt in being in sales when you were in over Hawaii and that you finished up with, and how it impacted you because you didn't want to be offended to anybody, by what their culture was, but learning what that culture is and how different the extreme was from where you came from. You want to just share a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I definitely knew that I had to change the way I thought, and coming from the military of 10 years and being in that, I guess, that mentality of always telling people what to do, I had to kind of adjust that because the clients that I had when I got out of the service, I was still around the military. And I was fortunate enough to go from overseas to Hawaii to do the same thing I was doing for the military. And I realized that the way I believed how to do the sales had to change, because it's not like I could just walk into a place and say, well, you're going to use this like this, and that's just the way it is. I was in that type of environment where I was the only show in town, so I kind of had a monopoly on, because I had the contract, right?
Right.
Uh, but now I had to shift gears and go from having everything to starting from scratch, and I'd have to sell myself to them.
Hmm.
And the belief was, I had to change the way I guess my approach was. And it took time. It took almost 2.5 years for me to actually feel like I was part of the ohana. In
Okay.
Hawaii, when you're actually a partner in business, you're actually part of their family. And how I got from the military mindset to more of like the local Hawaiian style mindset was, I had to figure out how to be part of their family. So that's where I learned a little bit of pidgin. I learned a little bit of the slang,
Right.
and I incorporated that into my dialect. And I found when I did that, I was able to get sales. And and of course, you just don't walk into a place and say you're going to buy this right now. It took me, there's some clients that took almost 6 months to a year to get to earn their respect in their business.
Right. And that goes back into trusting too, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
when you can recognize the culture, and that's with being aware of what's going on around you in your environment, right? It's
Absolutely.
it's very key, and we're going to have another show on that, really paying attention to what's going on around you. So when you can see what's going on and this is how they respond, and incorporating that into and being a part of, like you say, they opened up their home. So you're not just being on business, you're part of the family. And that takes trust, a lot of trust, right?
Yep.
And so belief and trust really go hand in hand. And without belief and trust, you really don't have that confidence. So it's getting hold of what that belief and that trust is, and really bond them two together, very, very tightly. I can share a little bit when I was in the automotive industry and what took place, and this was in the 80s. And trust me, women were not supposed to be in the automotive industry, right? And I dealt with body shops. I sold sandpaper and tape and everything that it took to fix your car when it got dinged up. But I also went into the detail aspect of it. I went into the nuts and bolts and clips. I went into engine overhaul kits. I mean, you name it, anything that had to do with vehicles. But that first 6 months that I was in business for myself, I had been working for someone and I was selling a different brand. And this is, again, we talk about branding. So I had a different brand of sandpaper versus 3M versus Norton, okay? And it's like all they wanted was 3M again because it was branded and everybody knew it. And well, the guy I was working for only had Norton, right? So now, not only am I in a man's world, I'm trying to sell them what they need in a different cover that they ain't too happy about. So it's building that relationship and believing in myself that I knew I could change their mind if I just showed them that they could save a little money over here, get the job done effectively, and make the customer happy. And it took some doing. And they were testing me too as being a female. They're just like, "Well, who is this little chick that's coming in here, you know?" And so being able to be confident in what I was selling and knowing what I was selling, right? And believing in myself to do it. Uh, After I worked there, I think about 8 months, and I decided I was going out on my own because I could serve my customers because I had built that trust now. I could serve them better. And I told them, hey, I'm going to start my own. Oh, great. We'll buy from you. We'll buy from you. Okay. Well, they said that. I believed them and I trusted in them and our relationship that they really were going to follow through with what they said. So saying and doing is two different things. And I was fortunate enough that they actually did. And for the 9 years that I was in business in Denver for myself, I never lost a customer because of the service or anything that I gave them. When one fell off is because they sold the business or someone else took over the office part, things like that. But I never lost it because of what I did, and my business built. And in the first 6 months, I was at a $60,000 profit. Actually, it was in 5 months, which blew me away. It's like starting with $1,000. Here's $1,000 somebody gave me and said, "Yeah, go start your own business." Okay, I had no clue what I was doing. I really had no clue what I was doing. I just knew that those guys told me that they were going to buy from me if I could get them the stuff. Okay, I could get them what they wanted, the brand they wanted. Yes, I can. Oh my gosh. And that was another hurdle to get over, but I did it. And I was what they call a wagon jobber. So I started out in this little AMC Spirit, right? Which is, if anybody knows what it is, it's just a little tiny hatchback thing. And I went out and I delivered. So I first started making calls. Okay, today I started. What do you need today? And they would tell me what I needed, right? And then I'd call the next one, the next one, the next one. And then I'd run down the warehouse, pick up what they needed, and then I'd go out and I'd deliver it all, right? And then as time went on, um, I one of the shops I dealt with was a dealership, and he said, "Beverly, I got this station wagon that is coming in on a trade, and I can get it to you for $400." Right? It's just got a little ding on the thing. It runs great, and we'll make sure it works good. Oh my God, they detailed it out. They fixed the dings all for nothing, right? And I bought that little station wagon. Now I could carry extra stuff with me. Whoa, big time,
Mhm.
right? and And it was, oh gosh, after that first 5 months of being in my little spirit and being in that station wagon, um, January of that new year started, and I had enough funds where I could actually go out and I bought me a brand new Ram Charger. Oh my gosh. Now I could load more stuff up and went out. And then I went from that, I went into a big truck that had a 20-foot bed on it, and I had the shelves in there and decked out. I mean, I had my store. So in less than a year, I went from a little AMC Spirit all the way up to this 20-foot truck, with a big cab on it. Opened up the door, and here's my store. Right? It was amazing, and being able to put myself in the top 5 of the major paint stores in Denver, Colorado, without selling paint. And doing that within the first 3 years of business was pretty remarkable. And
Nice.
it's starting out not knowing what I was even doing. And I did have someone fortunate enough that helped me with the book work and did the back, and eventually he actually came in as a partner in my business, and he did that end of it and all the ordering and the books and everything. Goes, not my expertise, and I just had to sell. But it's gaining that confidence. But where it starts is where here, right? The belief in yourself, just like what you had to do. You had to go into that environment and believe that you
Yep.
could do it. So going into an environment totally Greek to me, where women just, it just wasn't to be, and make a name for yourself and to build
Right.
that trust in them, and go that extra mile that they were looking for. And it's actually where I got my start in counseling and healing work and stuff, was working with these guys, because I did build that trust, and they started coming to me and asking me about their relationships. Right? They trusted me enough to say, I'm having problems with my wife, and I don't know what's going on, and she's doing this, and what am I supposed to do? It's like, well, this is what she's trying to tell you by body language. And they're like, deer in the headlight, right? And it's like, okay, all she's asking for is for you to pay a little bit of attention. Don't go out and buy the world. You can't buy her love. Yeah, do the dishes for her one night. Put the kids to bed. Vacuum the floor. Go out of your way to do something special for her and see what happens. And so they started taking my advice and coming back. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it was that simple. Oh my gosh, it was so easy. It was like, "Ah, you're a genius," right? It's like, no, I'm just a woman. Oh yeah, you are. Well, I'm glad you noticed, right? And so I had that respect, but it all starts with believing in yourself and knowing what the element and the environment that you're in. And I'm telling you, Denver was big. Denver was big, and they had like these little glitches, these little niches. So I'm over here in Aurora, and people over there act like this. You go up here into North Glen, and they act differently up there. And you go down into Jefferson County, it's a whole different ball game. And then you go into Littleton, and it's a whole different ball game. I went to Colorado Springs, and oh, another whole world down there. All the same business, but the people that were in it, how they responded differently. And interesting, we called it the body shop shuffle. Like every 6 months, the people who were working on the cars, they got, and then they'd be someplace else in town, right? So you'd come in and say, oh, what are you doing here? But they changed their whole attitude in that environment, moving from one part of town to the other part of town. It's like you knew them over here, and now you see them over here, and they're responding differently because of the environment that they're in on that section of town. That was, I found, very fascinating, how people just shift by just crossing, a few miles. A few miles. So, we're talking about crossing from one state to the next and one part of the country to the next, and military to civilian life, right? In that belief, in that trust. So, it's being aware of what it is that you're doing. So, I think you said you spent some time overseas too, right?
Yep.
In Japan, was it?
Yep.
Can
Yep.
you
When I
share
was
with
a
our
civilian.
Yeah, share with our listeners how living in Japan versus Hawaii versus Michigan,
Hmm.
and a little bit how that belief system had to change, and the trusting, gaining the trust of the community where you were. Can you share some of that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, being overseas, working on the bases, it is like working on, in the United States, but you are uh, the ambassador for the United States when you're
Right.
over in a foreign country. And, so the way you would act would not, you'd actually have to think about what you're going to do when you go out because, the eyes are always on you. So, and the thing is, I mean, I'm married to an Okinawan, and to the it's like the family and the culture is totally different than from my family and my culture.
Sure.
So I had to be open about it, and I couldn't judge it. I just accepted it, and it was a different lifestyle, and so going from overseas, being in the military, that lifestyle, and integrating with the locals. Yeah, I mean, your mindset had to be open. That's all I can say is, and at the same time, you had to be an ambassador of the United States, because if something happened, you definitely be in the newspapers
Right.
over
Right,
there.
exactly. Yeah.
And then going from overseas to, I still consider Hawaii overseas because you're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, but that was another different culture. I mean, the thing was, everybody looked like they were from Japan, but they were Americans. So
Hmm.
it took me a while to get adjusted. I just like, wow, everybody speaks really good English here. I kept feeling like I was actually still in Japan, but I had to adjust, and they let me know. They say, "Hey, I'm American. Stop doing that." Like
Right.
I'd bow to them and speak a little Japanese to them. They say, "What are you talking about? I'm American. Speak English." So it was a little bit of adjusting, and then now that I'm here, in the mainland United States, and I'm went from tropics to now I'm up in the tundra.
Yeah, it probably
Uh,
feels like it now, doesn't it, this time of
yeah,
year? Right. Right.
but my son, we just got him in school yesterday, from the move that we just done here, and he was saying, "Wow, everybody's so friendly up here. Everybody wants to know who I am and what I do." And I said, "You're in a different environment. People want to know who this outsider is. And so we're getting ready to make another adjustment here."
Great. And it's I think it's really good to have your children experience different cultures,
Yep.
different environments, and everything, whether it's a vacation thing or if it's a transfer, it's a move, because it teaches them that there are other ways of living, right? People have
Right.
other cultures, and after being like in Japan, you move to Hawaii and there are a lot of Asians over there, so you're
Yep.
thinking you're still there because it's habit. You created a habit over there to fit in with that culture, to make it work for them and work for you. Then you move to another environment and the people look the same, like you say, you thought you were still in Japan, so you're responding automatically with that habit that you created over there, and they have to remind you that we're not from over there, we're from here, right? And so that's shifting, right? So when you have a belief system that becomes inner core, it becomes a habit, which then turns into what we call your personality trait, and it runs on autopilot. And so it's learning how to recognize where your autopilots are before you can change those habits. And so again, we look at different habits, and we'll get into that in another show, where we go deep into what those habits are and how you can recognize habits that you want to change because they're not your belief anymore, or maybe you have a bad habit that you want to make a better habit. And we'll talk about that. So I think we're about ready to wrap it up here, unless you have any final words, Robert, that you'd like to say.
Oh, well, happy to be invited to the show. And just to let all the listeners know that this is your debut, of your show. And we want to invite anybody that has any thoughts, anybody that wants to add, anybody that wants to be on your show to to leave a comment below. And we'd love to get more folks on the show here. And
Right.
I just personally, I actually, I'm very intrigued with the information that you've put out. I've caught a couple of your webinars and stuff, and it just, I relate to it. And I think, we need we need to get you out there around the whole world to build the communities up and help them, just like you're helping others, in your community and stuff. I definitely want to get the word out of the knowledge that you have, Beverly. So really excited to be here, and I look forward to more of your shows.
Well, thank you, Robert. And it is about getting yourself out there, right? And I have to say thank you to Robert here because he is the one that's the genius behind the scenes that makes it happen. It's a team effort here, and he's awesome. If you can
Thank you.
use, if you ever want to use his services, comment below. It's like, how are you doing this? Because we're streaming over every social media right now. It's really cool. We got this beautiful background here, right? We've got different things going on. He's got me something over here on this screen that I'm doing, and I got to do this over here, and it's like, but it's fun and it's not difficult. And he sets it all up, and he says all you gotta do is push the button, and it's like, well, okay, I can push buttons, right? But it's behind the scenes. So without having the behind the scenes technology, I would not be able to be here in the capacity that I am because I don't have to think about, oh, did I get this set up right? Did I get that set up right? Robert's your man. If you want help with that, then comment below and say, I think I could use some of his help. And he's great. I'm telling you, he's great, and he makes it fun, makes it simple, and he doesn't like use language that you're saying, I don't understand that word. He puts it in plain, simple English, and I promise he won't talk Japanese to you unless you can speak Japanese, right? So, thank you again, Robert, for being here. It's a pleasure
Yep.
working with you, and I learn something new from you every single day. And that's what the show is all about: is helping you become the best you that you can be. So, with that, I'm going to say farewell. Let's go out there, be that best you that you can be today. Why? Because Robert and I are going to go out there and be the best us that we can be, and we will see you on the next show. Later.
Bye, everybody.